topic to discuss is deific masks. Because a common question and I get this in a variety of ways, sometimes in very caustic ways and sometimes in very curious ways. And so, what I want to talk about is the concept of deific masks. And because there seems to sometimes, again, be a lot of confusion between what is literal, metaphorical, symbolic, figurative, all that stuff, especially when it comes to the entities or spirits that we work with. And I use that term broadly for a reason, because it's, you know, do I want to say anything about like God's goddesses, minor deity, and go through every, title type thing that we ascribe to entities as such, from our little human existence here over the course of time, because that's changed a lot, and it varies from culture to culture, and religion to religion, pantheon to pantheon, and so on and so forth. So, I wanted to talk about a little bit about deific masks and what is meant by that, especially how on the left-hand path and in Luciferianism, sometimes in Satanism and black magic, when we're working with entities, what we kind of mean by that. And also, if you're new and starting out, because sometimes, when you're reading different grimoires, I mean, am I expecting a little, strange looking bird demon that was drawn in, hundreds of years ago in a grimoire to pop up in my living room? Literally. Not so much. Not in that sense. Is it possible? Sure. But this is what I wanted to talk about with this, because I see this coming up more and more. And, it's something I've been thinking about too, and really kind of looking at this from the Luciferian left-hand path, that sort of rubric, and it does apply elsewhere as well. Don't get me wrong. That's just kind of where I pitched my tent. I don't know the good expression for it, but a lot of this, when we talk about deific masks in this sense, comes from the work of Michael W. Ford. And if you haven't checked out any of his work, I highly recommend it. If you're interested in learning about sort of Luciferianism as a whole, Apotheosis is a great starting place for that. So, broadly speaking, deific masks are going to have different archetypes, different meanings, associations, visages, like how they appear. And sometimes those are going to vary wildly throughout different cultures, and that's taking into the expanse of human history, because sometimes those things change over the evolution of human thought. And now, in the past 100 or so years, in the age of global communication and travel, we don't just pick up a book about, a foreign country and are like, wow, this is really cool, and read about it. We can experience that. We can travel there if we have the means to. We can hop on our computer and talk to anyone, anywhere, at any time. So there's a lot more information exchange available to understand these things better. So, and in that, some things have changed. So, what a deific mask is we're looking at kind of a symbolic representation of the power, energy, or magical current. I'm adding that in there because when I'm saying like power or energy, like think of it in terms of like infernal energy or celestial energy in that sense. When I'm talking about magical current, I'm talking about, well, are you a Wiccan? Do you practice black magic? Do you practice hoodoo? Are you a practitioner of African traditional religions, and so on and so forth? So those magical currents are going to so in this premise that these deific masks, these representations, these are all connected throughout humanity, through all of us. And when we say entities or spirits, I mean, even gods and anything in that rubric of spirits or entities. And that's why I generally use that term rather than, I mean, sometimes I'll use dark goddesses in there, but that's why I tend to use sort of, a broad spectrum term for the spirit world. So all of these entities would be a deific mask. So when we work with a deific mask under the guise of that particular spirit or entity, this we could be working with angels, demons, dark goddesses, etc. You know, and in Michael W. Ford's work, he really describes the deific mask as a form or construct relating to the human mind, which is manifested or invoked through ritual. And I would assume also in like meditation, astral travel, like how we kind of work with different spirits. And I do have another video that kind of talks about that a little bit more. And in a recent video I did on dogmatic absolutism, I was kind of getting a little bit into this without having ever talked in depth about the deific masks. So I might link to that as well, because there's some good conversation in there that is kind of like, well, when we think of like Satan as a term, are we thinking of it theistically, non-theistically? Are we thinking of Satan as a deific mask for energy or power of a particular magical current? Is Satan Lucifer, Shamyaza, Beelzebub? Now let's look at that entity throughout all that archetype throughout all different cultures. So, kind of using that as an example was how I was kind of like, we can't dogmatically say there is one true Satan, and for the love of all that is holy, unholy, or otherwise, no, you're not the incarnation of the one true Lucifer, Satan, Samael, Lilith, Queen of Hell, or whatever. Because get that one a lot. Anyways, so sorry, my hair is a mess. I need to get it recolored. So, in Michael W. Ford's work, Adversarial Light, the Magick of the Nephilim, he sort of identifies 5 different areas of, or types of deific masks. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. This is one of the books I need to read a little bit, read more in depth, as I've only kind of read parts of it. So, but I found this fascinating. So the first type of deific mask is the anterior, and that's associated with the subconscious or unconscious. And this would be and the atavistic source of human being, of the human being. So this is something that could be symbolized, like by draconic energy, and is very primordial in that sense. And this is where we end up, when we think about things like in sort of the cross section between the occult sciences and psychological sciences, where we talk about the abyss and the void and the shadow. That's kind of that area. So the interior aspect would be the demonic deific masks. And, this is relating kind of to the super ego in that sense in modern psychology or psychiatric terms. And so these are going to be more, I'm trying to think of a good word for it, more base, more carnal, more visceral in that sense. The exterior sometimes is what is the angelic masks, and that's again associated with the super ego. And these are inspiring, self-improve. I would say both would be self-improvement, because I've done a hell of a lot of self-improvement with in the demonic deific masks. Ulterior would be that ones that are more animalistic. So I would say, or that would involve shape-shifting. This can be on like the astral realm, meditation. This could be working with animal guides or power animals, and I'll have another video on that aspect soon. And then the superior is sort of like the etheric outside of your body, or the higher self in that sense, is very illuminated, awakened, built upon, the combination of the other ones, the other deific masks altogether. So that's kind of, sorry to pause. I just had to kind of like think of my next thought. So kind of looking at these 5 types and how it's kind of showing the link in a psychological way and in the human psyche of, when you look at it in terms of like, what are you getting into, like Freudian stuff with like the ego, the id, super ego, all that stuff. It's been a hot minute since I have touched that stuff. I had to read a lot of Freud and Jung and all sorts of Jacques Lacan. I had to read a lot of theory, and when I was doing my undergraduate degree, because I did art history, so I had to do a lot of philosophy and theory and criticism and aesthetics in there as well. So some of it is just a little. I still stand by the assertion that Soren Kierkegaard can suck my lady balls. Anywho, that aside, it's been a hot minute since I've thoroughly reviewed like the whole like psychoanalytic method and stuff like that. I do know it quite well because I did spend a lot of time reading it. I wrote a lot of papers on that stuff and analyzing art and whatnot. So I guess to kind of to pull back from that, like when we're looking at each and every one of us, it doesn't matter what religion we are, what, whether we're an occultist or, in mainstream religion. It doesn't matter what, path you're on or what pantheon or cultural tradition, is that we all have a particular type of human psyche. And from that human psyche, when I talk a lot about how spirits manifest to you or whatnot, and I'm drawing upon your visual frame of reference or how your brain thinks. And in some sense, when we're talking about deific masks, it's drawing upon your human psyche, your human nature, and how you would say visualize, how you would see that spirit or that entity. And some of that is going to be peppered with how's that spirit been portrayed in art or pop culture, or how has it been talked about by other people over the years. So there's going to sometimes be some commonalities that are just things we've inherited from other people in our learnings and whatnot. So you can have very different or very, Belial shows up different for me almost every time. And I always know it's Belial because I guess, pulling back from that, is that we use the deific mask to give form to energies that are beyond space and time and beyond human comprehension, nor are necessarily provable or unprovable. No one can prove really empirically that God does or does not exist. So, or the devil does or does not exist, or there is one true God, or there was, any of those things. That's just, any matter of faith or religion or whatnot. You can be the most, ardent anti, mainstream religion person in the world, but if you're still subscribing to any magical practice or anything like that, you're still, may not be believing in the one true God, but you still have your deific masks and spirits that you're working with. And those spirits are often based on different types of and different archetypes, which I should probably do a video on some of the different archetypes at some point as well. I think I've talked about it a little bit in terms of shadow work, but so when we look at different, and it's something I've always found fascinating, is when you kind of line up all, in the course of human history, every type of religion or spirituality or practice like that, and you line them up, you're just going to see the same archetypes, just with different stories that are culturally or religiously relevant to that group of people or that period of time or that geographic location. So yeah. So now when we think about deific masks, like in terms of like when I work with Lucifer or Lilith, how I see or work with them, or what aspects I work with them, are kind of filtered through that deific mask. And what bugs me is when people kind of are like, well, I'm working, that doesn't seem like, Lucifer, or that doesn't seem like you're working with Lilith, or you're just having, ego projections, or you're psychotic, or spiritual psychosis, or whatever, and you're not having real things because, the Satan I work with isn't like that Satan you're claiming to work with, so therefore you're Satan's fake Satan. That is just ego. That's human ego. And the lack of understanding that spiritual experiences are very different for everyone. Do your spiritual experiences indicate that you suffer from psychosis? Probably not. For some people, sure, it does. Like if you're running around claiming to be the one true Satan, I probably think you should get your mental health checked. Take your meds. But if you're just, having, doing your evocations, or meditating with Lilith, or working with Belial, or working with Abaddon, or any of these entities, and sometimes I work with entities, I'm like, this isn't anything that's in the book. So, like I was working with something that came through for me, was the goddess Metropolis this year. And that's not something that I've seen or heard come through in anything else. So sometimes we have things like that come through, or we have our own spirit guides. So that's just a little bit. I hope I kind of answered some of the questions and make it, because I really want people to feel comfortable with this. And because I know sometimes when you're first starting out, it can feel daunting or frustrating that you're not getting it right, or that, you're doing the ritual like it's in the book and you should be doing, and you're not seeing the results. That sometimes it's just a matter of perspective, and that things are, in developing your relationship with working with spirit, there's always going to be some level of a deific mask that you're kind of working through with that entity. And it may shift from time to time. I mean, you might work with Lilith at times as, a very motherly, maternal kind of protector, and other times more, she's very sexual. So that might be that's an entirely different aspect of Lilith. You might be working more with her vampiric aspects. I don't tend to work with Lilith on the vampiric side of things, but it's not to say if you work with Lilith's vampiric aspects that you're working with Lilith wrong. I mean, some people are a little, you can tell usually when people are full of their own shit and ego and stuff. I'm like, I'm sure. Yeah. Like, again, you're not the one true Satan. So sit down, take your meds. It's usually more obvious in that sense. So anyways, I hope you found this helpful, and, we'll feel a little more confident as you're growing in your practice and building relationships with spirits, to understand that a lot of this is, representative, that there's different types that go in with your sort of overall human psyche, and just understanding that when you're working with these ancient, I can't even say ancient, I'm just like timeless, energetic spirits, bodies. I don't even know if they have bodies. I think they have bodies because maybe we want them to have bodies, and that makes sense to us. But so it just comes down to kind of your understanding of what. I mean, is the demon going to pop up by looking like something from the Dictionary Infernal, or is it going to pop up looking like something you would be able to visualize in that sense? Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. And don't be sure, if you are subscribed, to hit the notification bell to get all notifications, so you see when we get new video content dropping. So I usually have something coming out every week right now. So yeah, love y'all.